Welcome to the stage, Sandi Marx!
Oh, I love this. This is my favorite show. Oh my God, I'm always so happy to be here. And I have my water because I'm on meds, so sorry, dry mouth. All right, I'm gonna make you all forget about this past week. I'm gonna take you way back. Way back, okay? I'm gonna talk about my childhood, and I'm fucking old, so this is way back. So, when I was a kid, my sister and I, we had to deal with a ton of obstacles growing up. But the two biggest ones were our parents, Greta and Arnold Handelman, my mother and father, who I know they loved us and they did their best, but growing up in our little apartment in Queens was a shit show from every memory that I have. First of all, we lived below ground. Like, do you remember like on Laverne and Shirley when you saw ankles walking by? Well, our bedroom was one of those rooms where you just saw the feet walking by because we were subterranean. And it was so hot because I don't know why they did this, but apparently the furnace that heated the entire side of our building on Yellowstone Boulevard in Queens was in our apartment. So, like, did you see that movie, The Titanic, when they're like shoveling coal and everybody's soaking wet? Well, that's what our apartment was like all year round. Okay, now, this wouldn't be so bad, except that my parents chose, probably smartly, that if we're gonna live that way, they need to be pretty much almost naked most of the time. So my mother was a robust, buxom woman. She claimed she retained water. She was huge. She loved food. She ate all the time. And she would walk around pretty much all the time in just a brassiere. It wasn't a bra. It was a brassiere that had like 40 eyes and hooks in the back. And, you know, you could see the long line of cleavage, sweat on her mustache, and then her big underpants, always. This is her look. And my father, he was in a white, dirty, schmutzy t-shirt, like in the morning. Like, I don't know what, if you had like a Meatball Hero like that morning, but dirty t-shirt, boxers. It was not like, this wasn't the streetcar named Desire. There was nothing sexy about this couple. They were my parents. And my sister and I would hear them yelling in their, it wasn't like a dining room or a real kitchen, it was a dinette, tiny room, yelling constantly because we never had any money. We were always broke. And my poor mother was trying so hard to pay the bills, but my father could not hold a job. The only job he once held for more than a year was at a crayon factory. It wasn't Crayola, it was called Creston. They made imitation faux Crayola crayons. So my sister and I were little kids and we're writing with what could be called maybe waxy Hanukkah candles. Like, it was just bad. Okay, so what my sister and I would do to hide from the parents would stay in our room. Now, when we did have to come out for meals, it was also a problem because my mother, not only did she hate to cook, she owned a cookbook. I swear this is true. It was called the I Hate to Cook cookbook by this woman named Peg Bracken. She was like the Irma Bombeck of like funny cookbooks. So the bar was set so low, every dish, every dinner involved Campbell's soup. There was pork chops, cream and mushroom soup. I kind of like that one. But the one my mother loved the most was a vegetable soup that had noodles made out of letters. And she'd make a meatloaf with it. And remember, no clothes. They're eating half naked. So we'd sit at this little crouchy table, and my mother, we're Jews. We don't close our mouth when we eat. We drink Hoffman's cream soda, paper towels, napkins. We're like, you know, it's like as if it's the last meal. And my mother is screaming at my father, and the alphabet's flying on her, like, continental shelf. She's got, you know, like an X and an N and an L, and we're sitting there, my sister and I, we don't want to eat with these people. So what we used to say was, can we eat in our room on snack tables? We had snack tables. And my parents always said yes, probably we were so skinny, they were probably afraid we were going to starve to death because we just couldn't look at them. And two, they didn't want us to hear them constantly fighting all the time. So we'd go in our room, and the most important thing in our tiny bedroom was our portable black and white television set. It was the bomb. And we set it up. We had it set up so there was tinfoil on the antenna to create HD quality, you know. And then it was NBC, CBS, ABC, maybe Channel 9. That was it. And Channel 13, we weren't going near that. We might learn something. So we're not going to. So, and what made it worse was we didn't have a dial. No, there's no remote controls. I'm like from the Stone Ages. So we didn't have the remote, the dial. Somehow we got lost. We had to use pliers to change the channel. 2, 4, or 7. We didn't care. We watched Merv Griffin. We watched I Dream of Jeannie. We were happy. We were away from our parents. But there was one thing we waited for all year round. 51 weeks we waited because we didn't have the options everybody has now. And that was to watch the week before Thanksgiving, The Wizard of Oz. Now, back in the olden days, when I was a kid, you didn't rent, you couldn't demand, you didn't go on Netflix, there was no DVRing. If you wanted to see something, you had to fucking wait. And you had to wait a whole year. And there were 2 shows every year that made the holidays better for me, because we were Jews, we didn't really give a shit about Christmas, but we were going to be able to see It's a Wonderful Life once a year, the week of Christmas, but more importantly for me, The Wizard of Oz, the week before Thanksgiving. This was a big night, this was special, and my mother knew it. So I'd have my own Thanksgiving dinner on my snack table with my sister in our bedroom, which was probably the best Thanksgiving dinner I will have ever had, and will continue to have. Swanson TV dinner. Turkey in the middle, stuffing, cranberry sauce, and do you remember what the dessert was? It was an apple cobbler. Now, if you haven't lived old enough to know about the Swanson TV dinner, it's not a Hungry Man dinner, it's just the Thanksgiving special. It was delicious. And we would have a chocolate egg cream to kind of wash it down. It was fantastic. So we'd set up, we'd sit there, we were so happy. We were going to watch The Wizard of Oz. Every year we did the same thing. And like magic, my mother would be teleported as soon as Judy Garland sat on that dusty Fishtunky rock in the middle of that dust bowl that was in the middle of, I guess, Kansas before the storm. She'd start singing that beautiful song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And like Roadrunner, my mother would go fly into our bedroom, and she would, I'm not kidding. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember who, in the olden days, not Rosalind Russell, but Ethel Merman was. Now, when Ethel Merman sang, she planted her feet, like she kind of supported herself and she kind of launched into a song. Well, that's what my mom would do. In her brassiere and her underpants, she'd fly into the room, the song came on, and my mother would belt it out like nobody's business, and she'd start to cry. It was so disturbing. I just wanted to be left alone with the turkey and the stuffing, and I have a mother with her feet planted in her bra singing on top of her voice this beautiful song, and she'd start to cry, and then I'd start to cry. And then she explained to me that on her side of the family, the Goldmans, we were all genetically engineered to cry when we hear music, which, you know, at first it sounded kind of ridiculous, but then I gave it some thought, and I thought she may be right. And she told me that her grandfather and her father, they all cried when they heard music. And then to back it up, sidebar, 2 years later, I went to sleepaway camp for 1 month. And it was probably the second week. And we were singing If I Had a Hammer. I don't know if you know that song. And I started to cry. I had no more friends the rest of the summer. And I realized she's probably right. Genetically speaking, we cry when we hear music. So that was my mother. Now, what my mother had also had told us 1,000,000 times when we were really little is that she wanted to have a career as a chanteuse, as a singer. She wanted to work it like she used to do before she met my dad, weddings and bar mitzvahs in Montreal where she had grown up. And then she got married at 19 years old, had the second child, me, when she was 22, and she basically was saying that she took a road that she shouldn't have, and that she has a lot of regret, but that's the way it was. So, I mean, this is, talk about Jewish guilt. Can you imagine after that, like every time I'd ask her to cut the crust off of a tuna sandwich, and all I'm thinking about is that this woman gave up her whole life, and now I'm worrying about my tuna sandwiches. So it wasn't easy, but I had to live with it. And she would sing, she'd scat on the streets and just kind of freestyle, and I just would roll my eyes and pretend that I did not see it. I wanted to ignore it because it was embarrassing. When you're a kid, everything your mom does is so embarrassing. Well, thank God we made it through. I made it through my, years as a kid, and we all seemed to manage to, my parents seemed to manage, and then fast forward more than 20 years later, okay? And at this point, I'm married with my own family, and I'm living in the city on the Upper West Side, and my parents decide they're retired. My father, who's he kidding? He was retired since he left the crayon factory, but my mother left her job. She was at Bloomingdale's selling baby clothes, praying I'd have more children, and they decide they're going to move to southern Florida because all of their friends had flown the coop, all those snowbirds had left, and it was their turn, and they were going to live there year-round. And I thought maybe it would be good. A change would be terrific. So they moved down to Florida. But what I didn't think about or realize was that my mother had this potential and opportunity to start her life over. And sure enough, my mother became the star of the Sunrise Phase 2 Serenaders. And in southern Florida, they would gig all of these lovely singers at every possible nursing home and sort of like senior center they could find all the way down in Miami, especially during Thanksgiving and New Year's. It was there, and they wore a costume. It was a Hawaiian shirt and white slacks, and they sang lots of holiday songs, but my mother was their star soloist, and her big number was Wind Beneath My Wings. I know, that's a really hard song. I mean, you gotta have chops for that one. And I kept thinking, oh my God. But then I also thought, well, 99% of them are deaf, 100% of them are 99, what's the difference? And then she would call me every week and say, we killed. And I thought they could die. Maybe not something you want to say, but I was so happy that she was so happy, even though I thought, oh. Now, what she used to do is she practiced at home. She had a Mr. Microphone, and my father would sit on the couch, and she would sing all of her songs for the big numbers at the shows, and he loved this woman. No matter how much she tortured him, even in their underwear, he loved this woman so much. And they didn't even use, oh, by the way, they had air conditioning. They did not use it down there. I don't know if they were suspicious that something else was in the air, or they didn't want to spend the money. It was hot as fucking hell in that apartment in Florida, and they had air conditioning. That's another story. So maybe they just need an excuse to stay in their underwear. I don't know. So anyway, so my mother is practicing, and my father used to tell us, he looked at her, he was so in love with her all these years, he used to tell us when we were really little, when I met your mother, she looked like a brick shithouse. Now, okay, now I can kind of sort it out. But when you're 8 and your father tells you that, the vision of your mother looking like stacked bricks made out of shit. Like, it's bad enough I'm staring at these huge tits every night at dinner. Now I have to think of another. That's another story. That's why I'm sort of drinking water. I'm so fucked up. All right, so anyway, my mother calls and she says, okay, your dad's turning 70. His birthday happens to fall out on Thanksgiving. And I want you guys to fly down we had 3 kids under the age of 8, but they're out of school. You'll bring them down for a long weekend. It'll be great. We're gonna have a party, and then I'm going to honor your dad by singing his favorite song, Wind Beneath My Wings. And I'm so nervous. I'm thinking, this isn't the nursing home. These people have ears. They're gonna know what she sounds like. How is this gonna happen? So we all get down to Florida. Now, I really, really train my kids. I say, okay, guys, no laughing, no fidgeting. You clap. I don't want to see you squirming. You tell her she is amazing. No matter what comes out, no matter what happens, your grandmother is the shit. I didn't say the shit, but that's what I was thinking. Okay, so we get down there. We meet at the restaurant. It says Chops and Cocktails. Remember those kind of restaurants in neon? And it's in a tiny little strip mall next to one of these walk-in centers that does kidney dialysis, I think. Right next door. They're seniors. It's 4 o'clock in the fucking afternoon. So we all haul in. My mother's so excited and nervous. This is the big. Everyone's there. We have a great time. And everyone's having fun. My father's so happy. He's 70. Yay, I made it. I haven't been murdered by my wife yet. It's great. Everything's going really well. And then my mother gets up. It's almost dessert. And she looks totally panicked. I say, Mom, what's wrong? She said, I can't do this. I said, yes, you can. You've got this. You're a chanteuse. She said, no. I left Mr. Microphone home. I said, oh dear, okay. I said, I don't have time to go back and get it. You're just gonna have to sing without it. Meanwhile, the restaurant was like, 5 feet by 5 feet. Everybody was gonna hear this woman. She does sound like Ethel Merman, and she looks like Tyne Daly. She's like busting out all over. I said, don't worry about it, you'll be fine. All right, so what does she do? God bless this woman. She picks up an empty wine goblet, like some old crystal piece of crap off the table, and she fashions it as her microphone. And she starts like Peggy Lee, like caressing it and singing into it. She's so committed to this bit that this glass, this crystal is her mic, that she's moving it forward and back for feedback. Like, I thought she was gonna like move an invisible like wire around. But the most amazing thing, and she has her friend, this big fat guy with a Hawaiian shirt and his costume playing on his Casio. My mother is really good. I mean, really good. Like, so good that all I could think about is what an asshole I've been the last 30 years. She could sing. And then I'm thinking, wait a minute, this woman, she's 70, she never gave up. She was patient, she took her time about it. She knew one day she would find what she needed to do. She wasn't gonna let all my eye rolling and bullshit cynicism stop her. She was gonna do it. And what have I been doing with my life? I've been sleepwalking. I took care of my kids, I went to work, I just showed up everywhere. I was just sort of doing what I was supposed to do. I was thinking, there's gotta be more. Is that, like Peggy Lee said, is that all there is, my friend? I mean, there's gotta be something more. This woman really was honest about what made her happy. And I kept thinking about that because I knew that this was an example that she was setting for me and for my kids. So anyway, I went back to New York and I just really kept thinking about it. And I knew this was her best day, and it was. And unfortunately, it was really bittersweet because only 3 years later, this poor woman had a diabetic stroke because she was so addicted to cling peaches and heavy syrup and cheesecake and just eating and living large. Her heart just gave out and she died. But I knew she died knowing she did everything she wanted. So I thought, okay, I got this. I'm going to live a pure life. I'm going to do something that's a little uncomfortable. I'm going to give the eulogy, and I'm going to put on a show for this woman because that's what she would have wanted. So we got everybody in it wasn't even a temple. We rented a rabbi. We got some chapel for the Bronx. We had her, she was in Florida. JetBlue flew her up. We had a whole thing set up. And then I told everybody about how incredibly selfless this woman was, how she gave her whole life to her family. She went through incredible hardship, so much heartbreak, but she still stayed true to who she was, and she couldn't have loved us anymore. And then, icing on the cake, I brought a ghetto blaster, and I had the CD of the best of Bette Midler, because I didn't have a recording of my mother, and I pressed play, and you could hear washing over the crowd, "Wind beneath my wings, not a dry eye in the house." I'm like, yes, you did this. Everybody's crying, but then I remembered, fuck, there's another song after that, and if I don't get up there to turn that off, this is not gonna be good. So I'm in the front row, and I'm like Tai Chi old lady crouching, like crouching tiger, old lady angry with the finger, waiting for it to be over. And I completely missed the cue. And then everyone's crying until they hear the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. All right, so I get that. Now they're all laughing. And at first I'm like, oh my God. And then I start to laugh, and I think, yes, I did it. This is the purest thing I could have done for this dame in her bra. This is what she would have wanted. I know this is what she would have wanted. So what I took away from all that was, it doesn't matter how long it takes to get there. I still, truly, I'm not making this up, I only watch once a year, The Wizard of Oz, the week of Thanksgiving, because that to me is a gift. If you want something badly enough, you need to wait for it. Again, I wait right before Christmas to watch my favorite Jimmy Stewart movie. I just wait because I don't want to give things away too easily. And I started writing and telling my stories and performing when I was almost 58 years old. It's not too late, because if something's really important and if something is meaningful, take your time, and it is really worth waiting for. Thank you.